Good evening, everyone. And for those on Patreon, Merry Christmas. And for those on YouTube, Happy New Year. It's Romania Black, and we are on episode 7 of Mob Psycho 100. So yeah, it's a festive time of year. This is not wine chan, though. Unfortunately, I have had a bug the last few days, and so drinking alcohol does not sound like a pleasant experience to me right now. So I'm kind of being like Reigen Arataka from the last episode. This is just cranberry juice. But I want to be festive and classy, darn it. So I put it in a wine glass. But yeah, I'm feeling Reigen Arataka like I needed a lemon sour with extra sour. So yeah, we're on episode 7. The last episode, halfway point of the season, crazy stuff happening, right? Where Mob and Reigen have kind of split. They've gone separate ways. They're doing their own thing. And Reigen has kind of turned over a new leaf and realized he needs to grow up and be somebody. And so he's become this better psychic because of it. And however, he was convinced to go onto this show. And apparently Judo, one of the psychics from the association that Reigen's friend was in, has decided that they're just going to out him as a fake psychic. So I'm a little worried. I also was thinking about this the other day, but the guy that is the host of this psychic show kind of looks like the guy from the OP that was guarding Show's dad. So is something bad going to come from that? I don't know. There's supposed to be, and I've got something in my eye. There we go. Maybe that's better. But yeah, so whatever's going to happen with Reigen, I don't know, but I'm a little bit concerned. So I don't have very many comments. I actually only have one comment going into this, and that is Lyndon Price with episode 6 was saying that the director of the episode, Musashi, used the same mountain imagery with Mob on top of the mountain and Goda down below that was used by Bones for My Hero Academia, where you have All Might and Endeavor. And I was like, oh, it is the same imagery. So I thought that was funny. That was really cute. And then, of course, regardless of it being Christmas or New Year's, we need to have the Reigen Thirst update. It needs to happen. So I do have a few small entries. Most of these are Christmas themed. I liked Minot shared this on the Discord where it was Teru with his hair like a big Christmas tree, and Mob is like putting the ornaments on it. Super cute. I love Teru with his big giant hair being Christmas themed. That kind of also goes with this one. I think I've shared it before, where it was Teru in the Santa Claus outfit with the giant hair. And I love that Dimple is just sitting there with this little bag of toys. And I love that you see like the snowman is Mob, and there's also Mob in like a Dimple reindeer costume. It's really cute. I like it a lot. And of course, Reigen is Santa Claus too. We've not seen Reigen and Teru interact hardly at all, but Teru was kind of like all about Reigen in season 1, thinking he was as good as Mob was making him out to be. Ritsu, of course, hates Reigen, but I feel like Teru might get along with Reigen, especially if Reigen has turned over a new leaf. Thanks to Mob, perhaps. There was also these two images as well. This one's not really themed around anything. I just thought it was really cute to do with season 2. And it is Ritsu and Teru and Mob at a crane game. And Reigen really wants like one of those little balls. It's probably like a stuffed plushie version of it. Again, Reigen and Mob are both like after the same thing, which is kind of fun, but it also shows like a little bit more of a childish side to Reigen, which we've seen in the last episode. He is, more of a kid at heart, even though he presents himself as the adult of all adults. And I like the Dimple's just like, ugh. And then finally, this New Year's image I absolutely love. It is of all of them, like in the traditional kimono and everything. They all, like, I like Reigen's is more of like a blue, like olive teal tone. I love Mob's scarf that's red with the purple leaves, and it's like red and purple. It contrasts perfectly with Teru's green theme. I just want to put out their green and yellow theme. And then Ritsu in the blue. So, and then of course Dimple's like doing that. So it's absolutely adorable. I love that image so much. And it has to do with season 2 as well. We haven't seen much of Ritsu or Teru this season so far. We've seen Ritsu in the last episode, he was extremely happy to see that Mob was not hanging out with Reigen anymore. But we haven't seen Teru at all. It's kind of sad. We're halfway through the season. Haven't seen Teru. Don't know what he's up to. I guess we'll find out. But y'all, cheers to a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, and a good New Year with Mob Psycho. And we'll celebrate New Year's next week too, as well. But I'm really excited to dive into this episode. Last episode, it seemed like it was just the end of a two-parter. I'm totally excited to see where it goes to from here. So, we shall see, right? But in any case, I hope y'all are excited because I'm ready. So we are going to start episode 7 of Mob Psycho 100. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. I said I wanted like holiday cheer, not tears in my cranberry juice. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, dang it. This episode, I didn't need to bring Whiteboard Coon out for this episode talking through it because it's like, I don't know how much there is to talk about this episode. There's a lot to go over through it, but I don't know if it's going to be like an hour's worth, but just, oh my God, this episode. I have never just between episodes 6 and 7, the roller coaster of emotions that you go through with Reigen Arataka and Reigen realizing why he is a psychic, why he's doing it. It's because of Mob. It's because the influence Mob's had on him. And that was Mob at the end. It has to be. Mob came through to help him save face. And he realized it. And then that's when they saw each other outside. They're like, okay. I do want to talk through this, though. And I'm not bringing Whiteboard Coon out, but I do want to talk through it because I was wondering about Teru. Teru's watching. Teru seems to have a pretty good opinion of Reigen, honestly enough. Teru seems to have a pretty good opinion of Reigen. Ritsu's like, this guy. But by the end of it, he's like, this guy. And just, there's so much going on in this episode. But at the same time, there were parts of this episode that were really hard to watch. Really hard. Like, especially when you realize that he was completely, like, Judo completely had him under his thumb. It was like, oh my gosh. So we go back to the green room, right? And the idea of an act, right? He's like, I get to make a TV appearance. And they have like, if you've ever been like, they have a green room backstage where if you're a TV personality or somebody that's a guest on a show, they take you to the green room. They give you like food and snacks and stuff. And like, they give you like what's going to happen on the show. They usually have like a TV setup so you know when you're about to go on and everything. And that's kind of how they set things up for Reigen, right? And just, I felt so bad for him in this because he's just like, he's nervous and restless. He's like checking his hair in the mirror and trying to make sure he's all ready to go. And the guy's like, all right, you're up. And so he gets nervous. He's like, I've never been on TV before. What do I do? And he's like, okay. And he's like, yes, let's do this. And so then he sees the script for the special and you get the idea that this whole thing is just a TV show. So from the very outset, you're like, okay, well, they're just acting. And Reigen thinks that, okay, they're just acting, but I don't want to ruin the game. Like, it's a live show. He's like, he knows immediately that the boy is acting. He knows it's all fake, but he goes along with it because he thinks that's what he's supposed to do. And he thinks that he doesn't want to he's a good guy. That's like Mob's whole thing is you're genuinely a good guy underneath it all. And so Reigen, he doesn't want to out them and be a douche. And so he's like, okay, well, I'll go along with this and I'll do it. His pride gets the better of him though. And that's where Judo catches him, right? Because we have this series, this show. And so, oh my God, they have on here that everybody's using like the Ouija board and stuff. And they're like, this is Jodo-sama's return to TV. And I love that he just sits down with his rice and eggs and then he sees Reigen and he's like, oh no. He's like, why is Reigen there? He's like, what the heck is he doing? Because he knows he's not really a psychic. But he's just like, why are you there? You're going to get in trouble. And he's like, will we be able to save the poor, unfortunate young man that's been possessed? And again, it's all an act. And Judo the entire time, puts up a front, don't give myself away, right? Judo Kirin sensei. And Reigen's, trying to put on the best first impression, being like, oh, hello, I'm Reigen Arataka sensei. He's like, hello. And he's just he's so, tries to be as charming as he can be. He's like, you can find my business in Seasoning City. And this guy with the fro and Judo, they work together just to out him. And it sucks so much. It's so hard to watch. But they, everything from the onset, you think that it's just an act and that it's all fake. And Reigen's like, oh, well, clearly this is what's happened. And Reigen's just playing along. He knows how the game works, and he's just playing it like anything else. Right? And so everybody, and the host, plays along as well. And so when they go to the TV break to like go over the script, Reigen, Judo's the one that initially asks Reigen to do the exorcism. And Reigen's on the spot like, I can't really do this. I thought I was just supposed to come on here and make some comments and have like a good TV appearance. But then Judo strokes his ego and says, oh, well, if you're too chicken to do it. Like, he like double dog dares Reigen, basically, through passive aggressivism. And Reigen's finally like, well, I don't want this old man to make a mockery of it. And he realizes that it's a script. And Reigen's like, well, if it's just a script, it's no skin off my back if I do the exorcism, because this kid's acting. I'll give him a cue and he'll know when to stop. But they were all in on it. They all wanted to trick Reigen. The only guy that wasn't probably in on it was the camera guy. And Judo, the kid, and the host were all just trying to out him for being a fraud. And it works. And it's so sad because Reigen could have pointed out that the kid was acting from the start, right? But he was nice. He didn't want to ruin the show's reputation, right? Because he's like, if I point out this kid's fake right from the get-go, like, this TV host, he's going to be, it's going to be all a big act and he's going to get in trouble. And so Reigen does the nice thing. He's like, I'll just play along. And then they completely turned it against him. Like, he does everything. He does like throwing the salt, and he does like everything, the massages, everything for like 30 minutes. The holy water chop. I love that he goes through like all of his different special moves. Sorcery crush, the express, the hypnosis punch, the banishing salt punch, cheeseburger tornado, the anti-possession jumping kick. Like, he's gone through everything. And then that's when, and even the camera guy, he was like, go to Reigen-san. Like, they had just set him up for Judo to come in and out that the kid was an actor. And it absolutely ruins Reigen. And I felt bad for him. And he tries to dig himself, he just digs himself into a hole trying to justify it, and then does the whole thing with Beethoven, and he's just pointed out as a fraud. And they're like, could it be that you actually don't have spiritual powers? And then he does the exorcist head spin. He's like, what? No, oh God. Like, Reigen's just absolutely dying inside. He's eternally screaming. And Reigen just can't get out of it. It's so awful. And then he's made fun of. And poor, like, Shimbaru and them's like, he dug himself into a hole. And interesting enough, I like that Teru's sitting there with Teru being a fashion icon, even when he's a side character in this episode. Those purple jeans and that turquoise teal shirt, a fashion icon, right? But he says there's no way that guy's a fraud. Which is interesting that Teru stands up for Reigen. Interesting, right? He says there's no way he's a fraud. He's Mob's sensei. And Ritsu is like, I wonder if he has a plan to get out of this. And then so it all goes downhill and spirals from there. Like, people are like, there's a group made for his victims. But here's the thing. This is the thing about Reigen. Reigen, for getting all this rep as a con man, he's kind of he is sleazy. No denying that. But he actually does help his clients. He doesn't, like a con man, like a con artist, just takes away from a client and gives no service in return. They just steal and that's it. But Reigen actually provides a service. He gives them something in return. Whether it's photoshopping the photo, doing the massages, going out of his way to do like the spiritual salt yoga or whatever, they get something in return. It just may not be what they expected when they signed up. It may not be an exorcism of an actual ghost, but they do leave with some sort of service being done to them. Whereas a con artist would just take your money and you get nothing in return. So when he says, like, you guys are just calling yourselves victims, he's like, they did get things in return. And the thing of it is, some of these people that are in the group were people that Mob did actually exorcise ghosts for. So it's like, you were getting a service, but they all just instantly turn on him on a dime. And yeah, that Glay's like, we're not victims though. And then the one people are like, oh, so he was a con artist after all. And it's like, it's his fault we're not getting any job offers. And I'm like, that's not his fault you're not getting job offers. It's not. And then we cut to the guy that cursed him that has like just a bunch of beer cans around him saying that I knew something was off about him. Like, it's very curious that one, the mangaka, like he draws a lot of people's homes, and a lot of times, like they're not like character homes in other series where it's very pristine and clean and neat and put together. There's so many homes that he shows us that are bleak or have trash everywhere or that aren't well kept. And it's kind of realistic in the craziest of ways. I'm like, one, interesting. But then this one guy, this internet troll or the guy that would like cursed him, he says, I'm going to feed the media even more bull crap about him. Like they just turn on him and they start saying stuff that's not even true. Just to spite him. He was like, they just took, it's kind of like if we go back to season 1 with Ogasawara, with the delinquent, when he was cornered by Ritsu and the class president, he didn't really do anything in that moment, but he was outed because they wanted someone to point a finger at. They wanted a scapegoat to take out their frustrations with, and he just happened to be the one to get targeted. And that's kind of the same thing that's happening with Reigen. He's being targeted based on this one moment, even if not all of it is deserved. And so then the guy with the eyebrows that kind of looks like Komori from Haikyuu, he asks Mob if he works at the Spirits and Such Consultation office. And Mob's like, yeah. And he's like, so your master's Reigen Arataka? And Mob's like, yes, he is. He's like, haven't you heard? He's getting bashed like crazy on the TV and the internet. And Mob's like, oh, okay. And then he thinks back to Reigen, and Reigen's like, well, we're getting a lot more jobs. He's like, I made this website so I can gain attention through the media platform if I become famous. And Mob goes, oh, that's part of his plan. Like, Mob's like, he wants to get all the attention. Like, Mob doesn't realize how bad it's gotten. He doesn't realize, like, how ostracized he's getting. But which explains why he doesn't go see Reigen. And Reigen is just, like, he lets the phone ring. He's just in darkness. And all you see is like the computer, and he's so mad. Like when he says, I was set up, like he's so furious. And we don't see Reigen lose his cool and be mad like this often. We don't see that. He's like, they used me as a scapegoat to boost their ratings for 30 seconds. That conniving old man. Oh, he's like, and he tries to like, make himself even more of a meme to like try to, he tries to do the comedian route where he's like, oh, I'll just use humor to like defuse the situation, right? So somebody was like, oh, that name. He's like, Anonymous Table Salt, where he tries to like, I love that username where he tries to like get himself to be like off the hook. Where he's like, he performed an exorcism on me and my shoulders and back feel much lighter now. I feel better immediately. Again, he tries to say, doesn't try to say anything he's not done. And somebody's like, I bet that's Reigen, isn't it? And he's like, no, they figured me out. Dang it. He's like, of course not. I'm trying to be objective here. And then they're like, okay, Rupel's Fox, criminal. Get lost, you fraud. Do you even realize you're a criminal? Reigen's watching. And then they show like his high school photo. Of course, they find this. And his high school photo, he has like the hair parted. He kind of looks like Mob's friend with the eyebrows. He looks a little bit like him, right? And Reigen's just like, is that how it's gonna be, you little bastards? He's like, you think I let a bunch of little shits who don't know a thing about hard work beat me? He's like, I'm not gonna let the trolls get me. No. I was getting worried for Reigen, if I'm honest. I was getting worried for Reigen. And for a split second, I was like, is he gonna consider like going the Mogami route? Because this is kind of what happens to Mogami. He kind of has the same bad thing happen where he, eventually decides to become an evil spirit. And I was like, I don't want Reigen to go down that route. I don't want him to think that. And they have all the different social media things on here. I want to just point out MobTube, Mob Twitter, Mob Space, Mobgle to Mobler instead of Tumblr, Psycho Book, Psychogram, Mob Channel, and then like Psycho instead of FaceTime. Oh my God, it's great. And then the Snapchat spirit is like a little mob one. It's great. And they like made a meme of him throwing the salt. It's not too unlike, our current media, except Reagan's not real in this one. But when they said in 3 days the ultimate evil had become Reagan's public image, being the ultimate evil, like at that point where they're talking about being the ultimate evil being his public image, I was like, is Reagan going to, is there a possibility of him becoming an evil spirit? And I was a little bit worried. I was like, well, he's in all the official art, so maybe he's still alive, but yeah, I was really getting worried for him. And then he's like, this isn't true at all. And like, he's ditched the suit and got into his track clothes, which almost makes you wonder if he like started eating and gaining weight because, when you're in a nice suit and then you start gaining a little weight, you like go to your comfy, your comfy clothes, your leisure suit. And he says, it's not true at all. He's like, how dare they spread these lies about me? And it said, the self-proclaimed new star of the psychic world, the scam artist psychic, his unbelievably bold tricks. Like they're just making shit up about him. And everything's like just in dim, like muted colors and blacks and whites. And he even goes to the Happy Trails bar. Before it was like all neon and lit up in pink. But now, and there's like a mob poster on the wall, which is kind of funny. But now even the bar people, they don't want to see him. They think that he's a fraud and he was using them. And then he goes back to his house, but like the media is all staked out there. And he decides instead to hold a press conference to like try to clear his name, right? Also make note that Mob's dad's sitting there, like he has like the beer and everything. He also has Mob milk and a beer and edamame. That's such a weird combo. But then Mob sees him on the TV where he's like, Reagan Arataka, the subject will include his previous activities if they were indeed illegal. And Mob's like, oh, what is going on? And then we go back to Reagan's apartment. And I think it's telling that when we see Reagan's apartment, it's all in the dark except for the computer screen. Just like his office was, the computer is the only part that's illuminated there. Like that's his only connection to anything. And everything else in his world is so bleak and dark right now. And so he clicks on the thing from his mom. And it says, you seem to be in a lot of trouble. I prepared an apology for you to say at the press conference. So if you get in trouble, just read that. Learn your lesson from this. Quit this scamming business and get a real job. I know your dad doesn't say it much, but he's worried about you. You should come home. You haven't been home lately at all. This is the perfect opportunity for us to have a family meeting. I'm on your side. Which sounds good that his mom wants him to come home and see him and that she says she's on his side, but there is that underlying tone there of having the family meeting. I'm like, he's 28 years old. It's like, okay. It's just, there's support, but then there's something under it, right? And Reagan just staring at it, looking so dead inside, right? And he clicks again on the PDF apology, and it says, thank you all for gathering here today. I'm sorry you had to take the time to show up today over my own personal actions. First of all, I'd like to apologize to all the people I've troubled, as well as to all their friends and family members I may have burdened. I'd like to take this opportunity to formally apologize to everyone. I'm so terribly sorry for everything I've done. And it says, now bow and hold for 2 minutes. Like that's just belly up, accept that everything's over, and go back home to your parents and get a job there. And quit trying to do this on your own. Is what that's suggesting. And Reagan, that's like the least Reagan thing possible. And he goes to print it off. Like he's going to do it. Like he's going to take it with him and do it. And so we have the mob thing where we have like Ritsu and Mob there. We have Judo, we have Beethoven. We have all the sketches here that look like they're from the manga. And this bear. Oh my God. And all the TVs onto the press conference. And yeah, he comes out. But he doesn't have, I'm assuming he has the apology like in his coat, right? And there's all like the lights and everything flashing at him. And so he's like, he wants the reporters to have a good impression of him. Right? And so it shows him like getting flashed by the cameras. But he's like, why'd you all gather today here anyway? And then we have the narrator saying it's pretty common to suddenly get tired of all this shit at the last minute. Like Reagan had the apology, he had all this stuff worked up, and then he was like, you know what? Screw it. He's like, I can't take it anymore. And they're all like, what are you doing? What's with the attitude? Are you mocking us? And like, you're the one who wanted to hold the press conference. He's like, it's because you guys wouldn't leave me alone. He's like, I had to do this. He's like, you basically made me hold this thing. And so they all decide they're going to ask questions to him. And he's like, wait a minute. He's like, I haven't committed any fraudulent acts. He's like, none of you can prove whether I have spiritual powers or not. You can't prove that anybody's been scammed. And all of my supposed victims have received something in return. So they've not been scammed. And he's like, yeah, they're self-proclaimed victims. And they just like all go at him. He's like, nothing's been proven. He's like, unless and until they are, I can still call myself a psychic. I'm not a criminal. And so he's like, yeah, you have no legal right to say whatever. And so the one guy asks if he has spiritual powers. And he's like, I don't want to comment because that's the whole point. You all just want me, you won't be satisfied with anything I say until I say no. And he's like, and you all don't have spiritual powers, so you can't compare yourself to me. So I don't have to tell you anything. And Reagan just defends himself really good here. He was like, you know, it seemed like you were excellent at ad-libbing. And everybody kind of laughs at him. And he's just kind of like, ugh. He's like, I'm testing out the mics. I'm not eating anything at all. And this one guy, I almost wonder if the one guy eating chips was like a substitute for one. Because you can kind of see like a Saitama, like One Punch Man thing in the corner there. He's copying an attitude. He's finished. And so then we have what we have on here. The tweets saying mic test. And they say, what's the criminal getting all pissy for? Mic test, LOL. He's like, about 4 years ago, what were you doing prior to that? And he's like, I worked at a company. And they're like, did it have anything to do with psychics? And he says, no. And so he starts answering questions then. Because they're not slandering comments. And they ask him, like, what kind of things did people come to you with? And he's very honest with them. He's like, they just came to me with, like, photos and stuff. Stiff shoulders. He's like, I helped the people. He's like, all the cases were solved. Nothing was left unturned. And he's like, the urban legends thing stands out the most because it was, like, their most legit psychic case, right? And they're like, have you had any conflicts? And he's like, no. And I think it's really important here that they say, have you ever sold any expensive salt or prayer beads? And he's like, no. He's like, I've not conned anybody out of their money for things that don't work. I've not committed fraud. I told them I would do something and I did it. And so then they talk about like information was spread over you about when you were a student over the internet. And he's like, that doesn't matter. And then the guy, of course, the reporter gets a hold of his graduation essay and says that in your graduation essay, you wrote that you wanted to be somebody. And that gets Reagan's like that. We go back to the moths and the light, right? What made you get into the psychic business? And Reagan thinks about it and he's like, why? And then Tara, who's been watching the whole time, is like, oh man, Reagan looks pale. Like Tara was like trying to like, you know, root for Reagan. And then the other guy, he's like, don't keep making the media outlets your enemy. He's trying to give him some advice. Judo's happy about it. And then Ritsu's like, something's wrong. He doesn't have his usual zing. Which is basically like Ritsu saying, Ritsu will not admit that he is okay with Reagan. He won't admit it. But in this moment where he's like, something's wrong, Ritsu's like, oh, he might actually be in trouble. Like, what do we do? And so then that's when, and then the other boys from the psychic thing are saying, great Master Reagan, what's wrong? He's like, why did I decide to live as a psychic? It's not like it's lucrative and it's troublesome. He's like, why? There was a time when I always did everything efficiently and was filled with curiosity about everything. So he's like, back when I was at the company, I was this bright-eyed youth that was curious and enthusiastic, and he just got burnt out. He got bored, quit his job, and rented this apartment on a whim, just being spontaneous. And he said he was doing the psychic facade just for like a while to make ends meet till he found something else. And he's like, he meant to quit 3 years ago, but that's when he met Mob. And we go back through that same scene, but then we see the woman, she's like, oh, my body feels great. Like she was fine with his service. And he's like, I'm bored. As it stands, I'm no different from a masseur. So yeah, Reigen was like, he's like, I'm basically just like a massage therapist. So I'm bored. What do I need to do? Like, I guess I need to just wrap this up and find something else to do, I guess. And that's when we go back to season 1. That same scene with Mob happens. He even talked about being a PI, like a private investigator, like Reigen being a detective. Hell yeah! Except he has the realistic answer of, well, I could be a PI, but maybe not, since they mostly just do investigations on cheating spouses, which is like a very realistic, pessimistic way to view it. But yeah, and he just, and so he's just sitting there thinking of what to do. And that's when Mob comes in. And I'm sorry, the voice actor for Baby Mob, my heart, he's just like, it's the same voice actor, but he makes his voice sound so small and timid and cute. And now we're going back to the same scene, but we're seeing it again with the context of Reigen and just a little bit extra added to it. But this scene of them meeting changed Mob's life, and it changed Reigen's life. Because for Mob, it was the first time someone gave him this really good advice that he thought was a peer. And I'm sorry, but when he just like looks at the door and he's like looking around, he looks so freaking cute. And for Mob, back in season 1, this was the moment that like defined his life, was receiving that advice from Reigen. And for Reigen, this was the moment that defined his life, because Mob inspired him to want to become somebody again. And he's like, is this kid a pathological liar? No, maybe it's an overactive imagination. He's so cute. He's like, but then Reigen says, either way, he seems rather troubled by this. And he invites him in because he's a genuinely good guy. He could have turned Mob away because Mob didn't have any money to pay him. But he let him come in and he gave him advice because he's a nice man. And Mob's like, okay. And then he talks so sincerely to Mob. He's like, I was troubled when I was a kid too. And then Reigen's like, because Mob is like, Mob just starts shaking and you see like more of him being absolutely freaking adorable. And Reigen's like, he's staring at me with his eyes brimming with hope. And like, just how cute he is. He's like, this is serious. This kid's in his own fantasy world. I'll just come up with something to get him to go home. And that's where it starts, right? And he's like, listen. But what he says, what he just comes up with out of the blue, just making up, is like the best advice that Mob needed in that moment, right? Saying it was just psychic powers. It doesn't make you any less human. And Mob, I will never get over this animation. This animation is the most precious thing in the world. I can't, y'all. I need a moment to process how cute Bones makes Mob, because he makes them the most precious little angel baby that I want to swaddle and wrap up and protect. Oh my God. Can't do it. He's like, you have to embrace that part of yourself and continue to live positively. And he just gives him the pat on the shoulder. It's like, the truth behind one's charm is kindness. Become a good person. That's all. He's like, can I come talk to you again? And then I love, again, Reigen's like, I don't know, I'm kind of busy. And then that's when he realizes that Mob's a psychic. And he's like, I'll show you how to use your powers. But then we see Reigen's world, just like in the ED from season 1. In the ED from season 1, where his whole world was black and white. But then when he sees Mob, it becomes color. Here, he sees this moment in black and white. And then it becomes color. He's like, back then, I couldn't help but admire this kid that walked into my life. Oh. And that shot between them, he's like, I wanted to grasp something for myself, too. I wanted to become someone special. And he's like, I wanted to become somebody special like this kid. Like Mob inspired him, but he's like, this is the result. He's like, I haven't changed. He's like, no. I haven't changed since then. In 3 years, I just kept using Mob and I didn't make myself better. I couldn't become anything. Maybe I was the one who's holding him back from his youth the most. And we see him with the slash across his suit jacket. Like from when last season when they fought the Claw members, he's like, I've been holding him back. I've been caging him in. I've not been letting him go to be himself. He's like, I've been trying. He's like, I said some really awful things to him. He wanted to change and I tried to cage him in. And then he's like, I wonder if Mob's watching. And of all the things he could say, of all like the 58,699 tweets, I love that we see through everything. He just looks up at Mob and says, you've grown up so much. You know that? Like he just knew that Mob was listening. And just gives that Reigen Artaka like, you know, like, oh my God. And nobody understands what's going on. Nobody gets it. But then I'm like, it's Mob. Mob makes the microphones fly into the air, and Judo, and everybody thinks it's Reigen, right? Except like Judo thinks that, and so do the other guys, Psychic Kicks. But Teru's like, that doesn't seem like Reigen's son. I love that Teru's like, no. And the thing of it is, it's kind of Mob's theme playing in the background, so you kind of know. And Ritsu's like, Ritsu, of course! Ritsu goes into edgelord mode instantly. He's like, this is getting serious. Mob, we gotta do something. He's like, Nissan, how can you remain so calm? Are you the one doing this? And then he's like, is this due to your spiritual powers? But Reigen's like, gee, I wonder what's going on. And he realizes that it's Mob. He's like, are you done asking him if I'm a fraud or not? In that case, I'll be ending this press conference. He's like, beats me. He's like, you should probably concentrate on finding your next big story. I love it. Oh, I love it so much. And then cornered, true identity. Huh. And I love that the one guy at the end's like, what was that? It was such bullshit. Ah! Again, his room's really messy too. And then, God, the end credits where he's like sauntering back and he meets Mob at the bridge. Ugh. But here's the thing. He meets Mob at the bridge. Their backs turned facing each other, and Dimple's just like, really? And this moment, because Reigen, he's like, Mob knows that I'm not a real psychic. He's like, why are you here, Mob? And he's like, I'm just here just because. God, this scene is so great. He's like, let's get the hell out of here. They're going to be running around for a while. Dimple's like, let's go, leave him. And then Reigen goes, he just sighs. He's like, you know what I am, don't you? He's like, do you know? And Mob's like, no, what? And he's like, what I really am. Hey, you haven't seen any of the stuff on the web or magazines. And Mob's like, I've always known from the beginning. And he could have said that he was a fraud, because that's what Reigen's afraid of. God, the animation on this scene! Can we talk about Bones animating these last 30 seconds? Because it's like the most beautiful thing, and like makes me want to tear up. Because Reigen's like, oh, you do know I'm a fraud. Like that, because Reigen's afraid that now that Mob knows he's not a psychic, he's going to want to leave him. He's going to want to go. He's not going to want to work for him anymore or help him, because he's going to know that he's a fraud and a phony. And he looks over at him, and Dimple's like, oh God, this is going to be cheesy. And Mob says, what my master really is. And Reigen's like bracing himself against the sun. He's bracing himself. And Mob's like, is a genuinely good guy. And then he sees him like do all the things from the past. Like that moment. I wasn't ready for really emotional, sad Reigen. I wasn't ready for genuinely tearing up Reigen. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that. Because that moment was like such the catalyst between him and Mob. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for really sad, tearing up Reigen. Wasn't ready. Yeah. And then he asked Mob if he wants to go get some ramen. Oh. I'm like, you better let Mob have whatever the hell he wants. Let's have some ramen and head home. And then he says, by the way, happy birthday. Aww. I wasn't ready for this episode to be like as beautiful at the end as it was. I wasn't ready. Nope. This episode was beautiful and wonderful. And I wasn't ready for it. Oh my God. What else can you say? Like the relationship between Mob and Reigen. I was like, oh, they'll work together eventually again. We just need one episode, baby. That's all we needed. That's all we needed was one episode, and that was it. It was so wonderful. I loved it so much, y'all. I just, that was good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, I freaking loved this episode. The animation, I'm going to go back now that I'm done watching it and rewatch it again. Because the animation in certain parts was so really good. So good, especially the last minute with Mob and Reigen. So yeah, so we did see Ritsu, we did see Teru, we did see some of the psychic kids. So maybe that's they're going to usher back into the plot, perhaps, now that we're past the halfway point. Now that Reigen and Mob have squared away their differences, realize they're going to work together. I'm going to guess that's going to be it. But yeah, y'all. Oh my God. Next episode's episode 8. Rule of 8. Y'all, rule of 8 is next. So the 8 episode does not let me down. But if this has been the season so far, episodes 1 through 6, and we got episode 8 next, this is amazing. I'm glad y'all didn't spoil this episode because it was absolutely wonderful. So there's that. But yeah, y'all, Merry Christmas on Patreon. Happy New Year's, new YouTube. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Mob Psycho as much as I did because it was an emotional journey. And now we move on to episode 8. So, in the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I'm curious to know your comments down below. Please, no spoilers, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, next week I will be back with Mob Psycho episode 8 of season 2. Bye.